there Reason users, PoohBear here and welcome to my channel. And today I thought we'd have a closer look of how we can actually map out mixer channels and try and make the most out of them using our MIDI controllers. Now, for those who don't know, under options there's a lovely option here called remote override. Sorry, it's very, very small. I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit. It zoomed in a little bit there. Remote override. When you click on that, what's going to happen is if you've actually got one particular one highlighted, and I've actually got a lot going on in the background at the moment, here it is, it'll actually show you everything which has been assigned. So anything with an arrow means it's free, and anything with a little yellow dot means it's actually been assigned to a control. There's probably a good chance that's my P1, which has actually taken a lot of things over. So you can see you can take control of virtually everything on here. So what we need to do, I'm just going to quickly turn it off. What we've got to quickly do here, and let's actually get this music stopped as well. Just make sure a mixer channel is highlighted. So I've got one actually, it's got MIDI focus, and then under file, I can actually just select this option here, which is export remote info. And here it is, it's going to come up with your MIDI text remote info file. So let's save that and actually have a close look at that. So as default, this is what the file actually looks like. When you open it up, it's very, very hard to read. So let's actually bring that into Excel. So we brought it into Excel, a lot easier to read. We've got obviously our remotables down here. Not every single one of these remotables are going to be usable. I think there's one or two I've noticed. So down, if we look at the input type, this is what we're more interested in. We've got a value, which is box standard CC. Obviously, that's saying toggle. We can use that as a box standard CC, but that's a button. So we think of that as a button. So remember what I was saying about if you've got the momentary buttons or what kind of buttons you got. If you haven't seen that video, maybe watch that. So you'll probably be handling them as a default normal CC. You may notice there's a few little dashes here. These are more likely output only. I'm going to say these are output only because obviously it's talking about peak meter stuff. So I reckon this is going back to a display. So something like the Nectar we'll be able to display some values which are actually going on there. So we can do that if we want. So these are what we're interested in, and so we can obviously do something with them. And I've done another video years and years and years ago called Helping Us Helping You. And it's still true. One of the key things I said in there is still true about any mapping, I think, is trying to work out what should go onto what page. And what I mean by a page is you've got X amount of controls, and you may say, fine, I've got, like on the case of my oxygen, I've got myself 8 knobs and I've got myself 8 faders. So I might just say, fine, I'm just going to map my 8 knobs and my 8 faders, and that's it, and not worry about anything else. But again, if you saw one of my other videos, we can actually use pages, so we can turn the page and they can be pointing at another set of parameters. And I think working out what goes onto what page can be that's the hard bit. That's the hardest bit about mapping. The actual coding is really, really easy. But we need to go through and work out, well, what is going to be sensible to put on what page, so we're not switching between pages constantly, because that's the whole point. We're trying to work out the pages and what goes on them, so you're not constantly switching between them. So I'm going to go through these and I'm going to come back with them sort of sorted in an order where I think the grouping will make perfect sense. Now the first sort I've actually done is by input type. It made perfect sense, so I can see I've got a lot of buttons which obviously appear on that obviously mixer channel, and then obviously down here these are going to be really what are going to be our knobs or slash faders, and there's not as many, so we can have a think. And I mean, look, we've got these old ones here, rotary 1 to 4, obviously they're non-existent if you're using Reason 12. If you're using below Reason 12, then obviously you can map them out. So I've had a little bit of a play around, and the great thing about using something like Excel or whatever editor you're actually using is you can obviously have a play around with actually doing the physical mappings to see if you think, oh, this will work, it won't work. What I find is also semi-key is that I can actually get to see the actual control in the background as well as what I'm looking at to say, yeah, that makes sense to group that with that. That makes sense to maybe to group these together. And sometimes it doesn't make any sense of how you're grouping stuff together. So you really have to think about it. And of course, you've got to think about how many spare buttons do you have? How many faders do you have? How many knobs do you have? In my particular case, I happen to have 9 faders. So I'm thinking, well, I might make level the 9th fader, end of story, and not actually have it on a page. So it doesn't matter which page I'm on, I'll always got control of my level. Saying that, I was looking at going through what I've actually set up at the moment, and I was thinking about, hey, I'm going to have all this sort of stuff on page number 1 where I've got my my level, my pan, and my width, and my input gain. So that's your usual kind of sort of setup. And obviously I can mute, solo, invert the phase. Yeah, that's all quite good. And obviously then we've got our pre buttons and that sort of thing, and even bypass. So that kind of all makes sense to have that maybe just on one page on its own. And I'm even thinking about actually not even having it on a page and saying, actually, I might allocate these to my knobs. And then I may change these to my faders. So I might not put any of these on my knobs. That's going to be on a page on a fader. That's going to be on some faders. That's going to be on some faders. And these can be on some faders. Now you may notice I've got send level and send level done twice. Well, the reason I've done it twice is because we've got loads and loads of buttons. So I could have a page of just these buttons, but it doesn't make sense. I may as well use the faders as well at the same time, so it's just trying to get a bit of logic in your own head. So 6 pages, is that too much now? Because you've got to have to remember that. Well, it is for them, say the mixed channel, so it's the sort of thing you could maybe get away with because it could be something you're frequently using. This is the problem with mappings. You create loads of pages, you will forget. You will forget in the future. Yeah, if it's something you're using a lot, fantastic. As I said, it's worth spending time in doing the combinators. It's worth spending time doing things like the Hamu's mod panels. I think they are actually worth time spending out and actually mapping out. A, because they're quite straightforward, and then you start remembering what you're actually wiring up on that day. So things could get lost quite easily, but saying that, if I had said, hey, when you're going to the mixer mode, them 4 knobs are always going to be this, it might help. And the way I've also laid like these things out, I've sort of come down and said, hey, let's have a look and see what we've actually got. Let's go to our dynamics section. So where am I? So here's on the dynamics section. You think of the buttons. So the buttons all match up. So we've got an on, we've got a peak, I've got a fast, and it's going to be a key, gate, the expander turn on, and then another fast down there for the attack. So making it logical as well, ratio to ratio, then threshold. I decided I was going to bounce backwards and forwards towards the knobs. I could have gone down this side and then this, but I find it easier to say to bounce backwards and forth. Also just makes it a bit of sense to say I'm going to set my range and my threshold, then I'm going to start messing around with my release or my hold. It just seemed to make a bit more logical sense to me as well, doing it that way. Then it come into this section here, which is all to do with the EQ, and that's where that was quite a nasty section because you've got so many buttons and you've got so many knobs that you can't, I could have put this on its own page, but then this would have to go onto 2 pages. So I've looked at it and I've said, fine, I would probably group this together, which happens to be just these 2 at the top here. Sorry, there you go, I was messing around. So I was thinking about swapping these pages around actually. So I might swap these 2 pages around. So sorry, so that bit there is going to be this bit here. And then I've actually said, yeah, I'm going to take this little bit and I'm going to take this bit here at the bottom and put that on one page. Might be right, might be the wrong way of doing things. I could get away with saying, hey, I'm going to have that, and then have this on a totally different page. So that way the EQ will flow a little bit more naturally of what you're looking at, rather than, hey, I'm taking my end bits and on a page, another page, I'm going to have the middle bits. It's down to how you think it's going to work best for you, really, at the end of the day. To be honest, I'm looking at this again now and I'm thinking, well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Fine, I've got 7 things here. I'll probably end up putting that onto one page, and then I'll probably end up putting this on the actual other page. So I'm going to change around the way I've done it. But things like the on, so this is the EQ on and the EQ mode, I would put on both pages. As long as I've got space, I would actually put them on both pages, and you can double them up. So I can have that on page 3 and I can also have that on page 4. That's perfectly okay. It's the same with these send levels. I'm going to have them on 2 different pages. It's perfectly okay to actually sort of start doubling stuff up. And that is more than likely how I would go about probably mapping this sort of mixer channel, because I have the faders and it just makes sense maybe to leave the knobs the way they are. I could actually also assign these to some of the faders and then put all these things on knobs. It comes down to, what do you prefer to use on your controller? I could just say, no, I'm going to have, this is going to be on the knobs, this is going to be on the faders, this is going to be on the knobs, and this is going to be on the faders. So that way, all of my frequency stuff is going to be on one page. It's just going to be split between knobs and faders. As I say, this is the hard bit of trying to work things out. And once you've got this bit worked out, as I say, the mappings are going to be very, very straightforward. So I'm actually going to go ahead and say, fine, I'm going to map what I've got. And I am going to map it to my faders just for argument's sake. I think the only thing I'm probably going to do is just mess around just with these two things here. Like I said, I think I'm going to group that together. It makes sense. And then I'm going to group that together. That's the way I like to do things. So I've had a bit more of a play around. I have swapped those around the way that I've said, so I have put more of a logical order. I've doubled up things like on the bell and the mode on. To me, again, these are logical, so I'm obviously looking at this bit here and I'm going, yes, I'm going to have these two, so I'm going to turn them on. And then obviously I've got the bell would be the third button in, even though the bell stuff to do with this down here, it doesn't matter really. It's just a logical order in my head, which I know is going to be what. I'm actually going to go ahead and do the mapping inside Excel itself. I think Excel is an excellent tool for doing this because you can, well, you'd see, I'm going to cheat. I don't have to type things out 10 times. I can type things out once and I can just copy and paste them several times and just get things moved around. And I feel like you can really sort of do a kind of quite a speedy stuff. So this is going to be my item. This here is going to be a key, which is absolutely, I should really put the word NA in here because we're never going to use a key because keys are to do with keyboards. This is going to be our remotable. So that's these items here need to be in this column here. Next one will be a scale, won't it? And then it's going to be, again, we don't worry about because we haven't got any deltas, and mode is an output which we don't worry about, but this one we will worry about because that's our groups. We are going to use some grouping stuff. So let's see, what have we got here? Instantly we know anything that's bold is going to be a button. So this is where we can really speed things up, I think, with Excel. So we can say, well, there's our map, and I can just say, right, I'm just going to grab that word map, and that's going to go all the way down towards the end. So there, great, cool. That's a map. So we're going to have to make some items up, and I'm actually going to go and make some what I refer to as sensible item names, like knob 1, 2, 3, and 4. The great thing about calling things knob 1, 2, 3, and 4 is obviously in Excel, I can say, well, these are all going to be knobs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, it's already doing it for me. You know, this is what great. And I am going to call it button 1. Remember I said I don't like calling things button 1, 2, 3. Well, for this side of things, now I'm really getting into the mapping, I will do that. And so I want to go all the way down to there. So there we go. So this is going to be quite quick to do, isn't it? So let's grab that knob there, just shove that in there. Then I can just drag that down. There we go. Bosh. And I don't know how many I need of them. Copy, let's just do a copy paste. Doesn't matter if we go over. Oh, look at that, perfect. And the only thing left really to do in this mapping is to set some group stuff up. Obviously I need to go and create myself a scope at the top here. So that would be something along the lines of scope there. I need to also do a define group, if you remember rightly, and then the group name is going to be that. It's got to be very specific, if you remember rightly. I said that for this keyboard shortcut variations. God, that's the word I always get stuck with. Right, and let me just make that A column set a little bit bigger. There we go. So yeah, I'm going to be my normal self and just going to call these page 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if I need any more. I don't know. Let's extend 5, 6. I can soon delete these out if I don't need them. Now, as I said, I'm thinking for the first set, then I'm not going to change my knobs. I'm having these on knobs. In fact, look, I've changed my mind already. I want all these knobs, which say knobs. I want these all in faders. That's what I decided. Oh dear. So if I highlight that, or is it Control H and yeah, it's Control H and replace and find. And find what? I'm going to find the word knob, and I want the word fader. There we go. Let's just say replace all. I'm hoping it's just done it in the section. Brilliant. So it's left my knobs at the top. Brilliant. So this first group, I'm not going to give it a page. That means it's going to, these knobs will always work no matter what page we're on. So now we're going to start the fun, and this is going to be page 1. Now, because it's a page, I cannot go drag and drop. I have to actually insert it like that. This is going to be page 2, he says, yeah. So let's copy that, and then we're going to paste that in. This is all page 2, real. This is going to be a page 3. So theoretically, this is more, I say more or less going to work. All I've got to do is update my codec for my oxygen, and I'm going to make sure that my knobs are pointing to, obviously, the names knob 1, 2, and the buttons are probably pointing to the buttons, and so on and so forth. So this is the section actually that we're looking to replace, would be this one here. It sort of exists, but obviously it's all on the CC numbers and everything else, so I'm also going to totally replace that. And I say this is sort of my test stuff, codecs I've got, so let's have a play around with that. So, done that side of things. Let's make sure I save it. It's always good to have a save as you go along. And now I'm going to go into the codec, and we need to sort the codec stuff out. Now, in this particular codec, I think, if I remember rightly, I think this was the one where I started, yeah, I've remmed out certain bits and bobs because things were breaking. So if I remember rightly, I'm going to put this back, and this is where we're going to start having a little bit of fun. And I've got to start doing my memory, and I've got a feeling what I'm going to do is pull up Midi-OX. So I'm going to pull up good old Midi-OX. So I don't want to remember things, so I'm just going to swizzle this. So this happens to be my very first knob, or they call my first knob. It's quite funny. I call that my first knob, and I call that because they do it from bottom row going to top. So they call knob number 1 is on your bottom left, whereas I like knob number 1 on top. Top left. And in fact, I'm going to do that. Let's do that. Let's be awkward. I'm going to swap my knobs around. And in fact, you can see I'm not touching my keyboard, and I've got another dodgy pot, that one there. I'm just wiggling the knob there. I'm not even twisting it. I'm just giving it a little wiggle. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to swap these around. So I'm going to make 6A fader 1, and then that's going to be fader number 5. So I want to go from 6A to 6D. So let's go back to our scripting. Here we go, 6A to 6D. I'm going to make this knob 1. Whoops. And I do want that as an X. Obviously, I was playing around, wasn't I? I said I was playing around. I was cancelling it. So we will start putting these things in manually. So here we go, knob 2, knob 3, knob 4, and really you should go on and on and on and on. I'm not going to go on and on and on because I'm only mapping 4 knobs, aren't I? But I've got 8 faders to map, so let's go and find the faders. So I'm wiggling the fader, and I can see that starting at 6E, cool, and oh, nothing. Oh, I know why that's not playing. Because that's 75, so that's the one I've taken out. So I'm going to push that one back in. So it's starting at 6E. That's the important thing. I'm looking at the word 6E here. So if I come here, this is going to be fader number 1 here. So I'm just going to type in there fader. And in fact, I'm going to take a copy of the word fader. And so we can put fader 1 in there. Thank you. And it's going to be an X. And it's going to be a 0 and 0. And all the way up to this one here. I'm going to call this fader 8. That'll be fader 8, won't it? He says, I think I've got that right. So let's have a quick look. Don't know why it's deciding to get rid of. Sorry, I'm looking at this, and it's deciding to get rid of my tabs as I put my tab in. It's like I haven't got an insert or something. Oh, there we go. My insert came off. I thought I was going mad there. So here's our 8, as I've got 4 knobs done, 8 faders done. Now I need to go back and find out my buttons. So what's my buttons? So let's hit my first button. 34, cool. And that button, I believe it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure, just double checking. I have got 9 buttons, but I'm going to go to button number 8. So 34 to 3B. 34. Don't forget these are all hex. So that what we're looking at here, 34 3B. So 34. That's going to be a button. To 3B. Cool. So all left for me to do really is at the top is to define these particular items. I don't have to get rid of these CC numbers I've replaced. I can do belt and braces. It's probably be best to. So I'm going to have myself items, and this is where I've got to really start typing everything out. So I've got to type out item, this, buttons, knobs, and all the rest of it. So this is where I'm actually going to quickly jump back into Excel and actually do this bit in Excel. So let's actually restart Reason and make sure this is saved. Let's go and restart Reason. We've actually started with an error, and our error is saying map entry to unknown group. So it's on 1280 and 1281. It's probably loads of lines. So let's go and actually have a quick look at that. That's our codec. We're on a remote file and we want to go down to 1280 and quickly have a quick look. So 1280 is saying it doesn't like the fact that there's a page 6. We had a page 6. Oh, look, no page 6. I must have, when I was copy and pasting between Excel, so let me just type in there, and it is just going to be a simple case of putting in there page 6, and that should be it. Remember to save it. I can just restart the remote map. Right, now we've restarted that, let's try again. Oh, so my knob, hey, so there's my first knob, brilliant. Let's actually bring the mixer channel down itself. We can see everything here. So we should have had mute. Cool, we've got a solo, brilliant. That one there should be pan. Then we've got my width knobs, brilliant. And, oh, that'll be my input gain at the top, so it's quickly whizzed to the top. I've got my input gain. And then obviously as I go along, I've got some other buttons as well, which I'm going to be hitting. So I've got that, I've got my solo, and, oh, I thought that fourth button, oh yeah, it is, there it is, it's my vert, and then I can start I'm swapping the orders of these around with these different buttons. Hey. A funny thing is, I'd never noticed until I started playing around with this. Look, they've actually doubled up on one of the buttons, like here, and it's up here as well. I don't know if they had a bit of space and they thought, oh my God, we've got to fit in that space. Not too sure what went on there, but anyway, neither here nor there. That's the fact is it's there and it's up there at the top and it's working. That's the more importantly. And obviously I'm just going to start moving one of my faders now. And what am I on? I'm on page 1. So that's something interesting. Obviously I'm not on a, I am on page 1 and I haven't actually set up within the remote file of how I'm going to get around my different pages. Yeah, so what I need to do in here is add some extra bits to swap these around. I've obviously got to go and update my codec file if I want to. The fact that the codec file I'm using has loads of CC numbers in it, I reckon I could probably go back to my Midi-OX. I've got a couple of extra buttons on my thing, and I can probably even get away with mapping them. They might even be mapped along the lines of, you know, I've got some CC numbers already set out, so I could go CC and go and find out what the appropriate one is going to be called. Same sort of thing. It'd be, because we don't have a key, the remotable thing, what we're going to want, oh, this is that long name. In fact, it'll be over here. Thank God, I won't have to type it all out because it is quite a long, so like select next keyboard, bomb. Oh, here we go, select next keyboard, shortcut, variation. God, that's a bit of a mouthful, that one, isn't it? There we go. So we're going to have that. I had it mapped to a page. If you saw me doing this before, I'm not going to be mapping it to a page because I'm not flipping back between two. You can do that on one button because we got to have this, and then the next one's going to be mapped. And by the way, as I say, this CC word, this has got to obviously be assigned in my MIDI codec. So I'm going to, let's use the word next. Let's use that word pre, and I can obviously go in and put an item in there called that and assign it to the appropriate button. But I'm just trying to speed ahead here, just to give you an idea of all the last little step we're doing. So that if I had now a remote item over here. In fact, yeah, in here I could possibly put an item in here, and I could call that one next, and it's more than likely going to be a value. I don't know, I have to go and have a look on my keyboard and see what it is, but that's most of the time that's what you do. And then I'll have an item here which would be, did I call it pre? I don't think I called it previous, did I? So obviously the important thing is making sure you do spell everything correctly. As I say, it's just about a case of me starting up Midi-OX really, and getting that going. Midi-OX, I stop and start when I run Reason, because obviously when I run Reason, I run that, I've got a clash of MIDI ports, so I have to sort of swap things around. But it'd be along them sort of lines, you sort of slap that in, and then that'll give me a button on my thing to do my next and previous, so then it'll actually start switching between the pages. So I'm going to quickly get that set up and get Reason restarted. In Midi-OX, these are the two keys I've decided I'm going to use. I've got one on 15, I've got one on 16. So let's go back to here. We've got a next, we've got a prev. So in our MidiCodec file, if there's our next, there's our prev. Oh, that's little capitalization, doesn't really matter. But yeah, we're going to have that. And then down here, this is where I'm going to find my 16. There. In fact, no, it was hex 16, wasn't it? Sorry, so I'm onto this one here. So that one there, CC22 should really say next, and CC23 should say previous. Boom, boom, boom. Save, restart Reason. Not doing too well today. I've made yet another mistake. These settings shouldn't be here actually. I just realised what I've done. I'm putting these in the mixer section. These are for the document section, so I need to take these out and obviously do a quick find on where let's call it for a document. Here we go, here's the Reason document. So obviously we was playing around with this before, weren't we? So there we go, so let's just bung them in there. And then let's do a save on that. And back to Reason. Here we are back in Reason. It looks like everything appears to be kind of working as I thought that would. So now if I hit my next button, I need to probably come up and see what's going on up the top here. There, so you can actually start seeing things are actually working as the way they are. And if I move my fader, here's my fader, there's my threshold, there's my release, so I can constantly come along, put the fast on if I wish to. There's fast, cool. Yeah. So we've got everything kind of working the way we expected it to work. Am I missing the fader? No, it's there. Cool. So it's there. Let's go into the next page. And my next page should be obviously coming down to the EQ stuff. And I decided to make everything in a logical order. So then when I go on to my next page, it's now carrying on down the EQ. I just felt that was a slightly better way of doing it. And then obviously the final page is going to be doing that stuff. And I can decide if I want pre, on, or say I'm going to select it, and then on this page I can say, hey, I'm going to have that on pre or not. Oh, I haven't got my pre stuff working. That's interesting. Oh, there it is. Oh, was it being just a bit slow, or I couldn't see it? I don't know. Maybe it was coming wait and I just didn't see it working. Might have another dodgy button there. Wow, there we go. I will admit I've got a slight problem with this mapping again. It looks like my previous isn't working. That could be, just happens to be the way I've set something up. Let's make sure I haven't got a spelling mistake. I should have a spelling mistake, so I actually took it from my remote document mapping to go into the remote document, so that should be fine. Called it prev there. Let's go into the codecs. We called it prev there. Everything else looks fine. And let's come down. I'm sure I said it was 17, didn't I? I'm sure I said it was 16 and 17. That's the only thing I could think of. Maybe I had the wrong button. It was switching between. I didn't swap these around. Okay, I'm going to quickly swap these around and just restart Reason. If not, I'm just going to call it a day. Okay, we are working again now. I can obviously switch them on and off. I can go forward. I can switch these off. I think I've got some sticky buttons, without a doubt. And they're going, and now I can go back again and I can turn them, yeah. So my next and my previous, I just happened to have, I had it set up incorrectly. Obviously I was pumping out, I had it on the wrong CC number. So, you know, mistakes can be easily made, so you just have to bear in mind, and you have to keep double checking little things. As I say, Midi-OX is a real great diagnostic tool for that sort of thing. You can just obviously double check things, but it wasn't in this particular case. It was just a simple case. I just happened to have the previous down on 17 when it should have been on 15. It was that simple. I will admit, when I started this video, I thought I'd just map out just a couple of little things and just demonstrate what to do. I didn't expect to do a full mapping like I've done, but there we go. You can see how quick it is using different tools to bring things together. You can obviously get speedy results. I mean, seriously, from start to end, I'm looking at record time now of around about an hour and 20. Because obviously there is a lot of dead space. I sort of stop and have a little think about things, so I should be able to condense this video down into a lot less time, especially with the restarts of Reason and all the rest of it. You know, so I think this isn't bad going, considering I've making the video, and also we've done a full mapping, which is working. And it's the same for any other device, really, at the end of the day. But as I say, think about how much you're going to be mapping out, because in 6 months' time, am I going to remember I've got 6 groups and what the 6 groups might be? Hopefully with the mixed channel, it is a little bit more obvious of what's really going on, and I probably will remember it slightly. But to be honest, I'll actually get out my Nectar, because I've got a lovely screen, so I don't have to remember it. It pops up. I can see it on the screen. It tells me what each of the knobs are, and that's why you really do need to have a MIDI controller with feedback. It's brilliant. But if you don't, just make the most of what you've got. Anyway, waffling as usual. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.